And in the second one, he's dealing with who is believed to be unbelievers. Both groups are well resourced. Both groups have what we would call money, or at least have resources to make life more comfortable. Some of the things that he shares in here, he would only share with those that are extremely well off, because most of the population wasn't. In upward of 70% of the people in that culture around that time were living as what we would call basic lives. Some of us would say paycheck to paycheck. And so this group that he's talking with is not. And by the things that he says to them in this first group and their second, you know that they are not the average citizens. They would probably be considered in that top 5%, at the least, at the most, that top 1%. But before we discount ourselves and we're like, I'm in none of that group, many of us here, and I would even say most of us, are resourced enough that we are living pretty well. And James in that first group is talking to believers whose lives are pretty well off. And he asks a question, what is your life? See, your worldview will determine the way you view your life. And it is also the way that you plan for your life based on your view. We saw all the way from 3 into 4 the differences between worldly, or as the scripture calls it, earthly, unspiritual, and even in some instances demonic wisdom, as opposed to the wisdom that comes from God through Christ. We see that. And then we saw the effects in chapter 4. We saw what each of them did. Now it turns into something even more grand. It turns into a worldview. When you embrace, or I should say, whatever you embrace will determine your view, your perspective, and your plan for life. Whatever you embrace. And you can talk all day long. Your behavior is an indication, or even the way you talk is a behavior of is an indication of your heart, but the way you behave is an indication of the wisdom you've embraced. We can say a whole lot, but how we live speaks to what we truly believe. And so as we jump in, I'm going to read these short verses. I'm going to ask you to stand one more time with us at the reading of our word, and then we will jump right on in. James chapter 4, verses 13 through 17. This is going to be shorter today than we normally have. You can read with me if you like. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. Father, may you strengthen us as we hear your word so that we may do and live your word. In the name of Christ, amen. I'm going to start off from the beginning just to let you know James is not against planning. James is not killing all of your planning that you do and says just kind of go through life flying, as we would call it, by the seat of your pants. Everything is last minute. I said, well, the Bible told me not to plan. No, it didn't tell you not to plan. It didn't say that at all. So I want to start off from the beginning and say, God is not against planning. What James is dealing with is this arrogance of a self-reliant worldview to combat the threat to spiritual wholeness. It is this self-reliant and the danger of affluence. As one writer called it, we in the West, we don't have influenza, we have affluenza. And I looked at that and I was like, boy, you just said something. Is that the danger of affluence is that we no longer need God. You don't pray and ask God to bless you. You go, I got the blessing, Lord. Thank you. And then you proceed to live your life. You have the benefits of affluence, and you think that the benefits of affluence are the blessings of God. Indirectly, he may be allowing you to have it. But depending on how you got it and what you're doing, it may have nothing to do with him except his mercy. The result of earthly, unspiritual wisdom is a self-centered worldview. It's a self-centered perspective on life. James put the two views on display along with its results and a very serious warning. The serious warning comes for the unbelievers. If you want to give a comparison, verses 13 through 17 gives a mild warning to believers to be careful not to embrace what they see around them. But next week, as we get into chapter 5 and we look at the warning he gives to the rich, it is a serious and strong warning that he gives. Because he knows that in that culture, this one and everyone in between, your level of affluence challenges the level of spiritual wholeness in your life. Whereas people will turn around and say, it's the Lord's blessing. It is. But along with that, because we still live in a fallen world, we still have a sinful nature and capacity, we are always running the risk of thinking, just because I have it means I can do it. You know the saying, they said, if you have it, flaunt it. You better be careful with that. If you can do it, do it. You better be careful with that. What James reminded his believers of, the believers at that time, and warns us is, be careful of thinking and living as if wealth or being well-resourced gives you the freedom of life without acknowledging and submitting to the sovereignty and the providence of God. There's nothing wrong with you deciding to take great vacations or decide I'm going to live here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to work this project. Nothing wrong with that. This whole text is telling us, though, be careful that you do it and have made no room for the authority of God in your life. That's the warning for the believer. And so let's get in. What he tells us in the beginning is there is this worldview that he wants us to not be shaped by. So in verse 13, he says, come now, you who say. Now understand, the generality is he is hitting everyone. And every believer. He said, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter your level of affluence. It doesn't matter if you know how you will look at others and say, I don't roll like them. Not understanding that there are other people looking at you going, I don't roll like them. You may live in the house with the 2-car garage. I'm not slamming anyone that has a 2 or a 1 or a 3 or a 4. And then you look at the person that has the 4-car garage and go, now they living. What? You are 2. You could park 2 cars. And if there's only 2 of y'all, how many cars you need to park in that joker? And so he says, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. And all of us be like, what's wrong with that? Many people going, that's what you want to do. You want to plan, but you have to understand what he's referring to. He said, we will. And this is what we are going to do. I've already made up my mind. These are the plans for the project, and we are going to make sure it happens. I'm going to use that as point 1 as a worldly wisdom worldview of life. That's long. A worldly wisdom worldview of life. Of course, that's what you do because you got it, because you can. Go on and do that for yourself, girl. Come on, man. Go ahead and make it happen. And the first thing that actually says is that my wealth or that my resources determines my actions. That's the worldly part of the worldview. What I've acquired and what I've attained govern what I do. We tell people here that we have a vision for what we believe God wants us to do, but we will only do what our resources allow us. See, there's a difference between your vision and what you are able to accomplish at the moment. If our vision is only based on what we can afford, that's called a budget, not vision. That's called a budget. But what's your vision? Well, what can I afford? Bro, you're missing the point. What do you see as God calling you to do with your life? And you say, well, I believe he wants me to do this, but I can't do that right now because I can't afford it. Okay, but still, that's your vision, right? So as God gives, you will do more. Some of us, the only thing that we think we can do is when we dig our hands in our pocket. Now, that may be the only thing that you can do at the moment. But what do you see God calling you to do? And God may be wanting to resource you beyond your pocket. And you don't want that because you don't want to be able to say so-and-so gave that we can accomplish this and so-and-so gave. You want to be able to say, look what I did. Problem. Because God is saying, no, I want you to say, look what I did through you. And so that first worldly, that worldview is wealth determines my actions. I do it because I am able, not because God endorses it. And we got to be careful. Because in our time, in our society, affluenza will say, you got it, young. Just go and do it. Why you need to ask God? Why you need to include the Lord? Just go on and do it. You want to buy that? Go buy it. Looks good on you. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have a prayer meeting every time you go shopping. I'm not talking about that. But there is some self-awareness as to what does the Lord want me doing with my life and my resources so that when I'm faced with that, I'm not at this cliff edge decision every time. Should I buy it, Lord? Lord, what do I do with this? But in your mind, there is always, what is the Lord calling me to do? Who is he calling me to be? How am I to bless others? Sometimes God does want you to know you don't need that 10th pair of shoes. And look, just in case brothers are thinking I'm talking to sisters, there's some of you brothers that got more shoes than some of these sisters. The issue just is, it says, look, he says, it is not about necessarily what you buy, This thing is about the resources that you're using and that you are sure that God is okay with what we call your discretionary income. See, the banks have really hit us hard with that. When you go to get a loan, they want to see how much of your money is committed to your debt. They call that your debt ratio. And they have a certain amount that if you exceed, they go, you got too much debt. We're not letting you have any more. There was a time, I was in banking for just over 15 years. Some people would come to do loans, and I would go, yeah, he's making a big salary, but man, about 60 to 70% of that joker is consumed in debt. You are one issue away from not being able to handle your predicament. But then you have others that they may not be making a whole lot, but they come in, and I'm looking at their ratio. I was like, well, you're doing pretty good. Because it's not consumed with debt. But then they have this other part that they want to see called discretionary income. That is the income that is at your discretion to use. It's free. There's no commitments on it. There's no one claiming any payments on it. And the more discretionary income you have, the more banks are willing to change that into debt. Budgeting 101. They are willing to go, oh, you got money that you can choose to spend anywhere. And as an old wise sage, well, not old, as a wise sage of mine who is here among us said, and I love his phrase, I'm going to give you credit for it, even don't you want. He would say, and I love that phrase, I got more time than money, Elder Murph. I got more time than money. I love it. He says, I can wait on that purchase. I said then one time when I heard him say, I said, brother, I'm going to repeat that. And I've said it to people, and I've gone shopping. Don't you want to buy that? Nah, I'm going to wait. Wait for what? Look, I got more time than money, bro. And it saved me a lot from a lot of impulsive buying. But the issue becomes, he says here, your decisions as a believer are not based on the fact that you can do it. It's based on the fact of, Lord, should I do it? How does it fit into the worldview of what you want from me and what you want from me? The other one that this assumes is my wealth determines my success. I'm going to go on with that verse. He says, come on now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. You think, I look, because I know how to make a profit, I will, and I'm going to work. And I'm going to work. He's not saying don't be profit-minded. No, if you're starting a business, you better be profit-minded. This is the Lord's work. I don't need to worry about profit yet. It'll be a short Lord's work because you won't be able to sustain it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to turn to profit. One here, what is James accusing them of? God is nowhere in the equation. So he says that my wealth determines my success. So I can do it solely because I'm already accomplished. I know how to make money. So I'm going to go here, do that, and I'm going to make more money. And sometimes that mindset gets us into compromise. We go, I know how to make money over here, and you start doing some things, and you know the Lord is pulling on your coattail. Man, that's not ethical. That's not good. That's not for the believer. I'm going to make this partnership. You know you shouldn't be making that partnership with that girl, with that guy. Leave it alone. Yeah, but I can make money on it. As if God is impressed with your ability to make money. God says it's all mine. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. He was like, you don't impress me by making it. You might impress them, but you don't impress me by making money. Worldly worldview, but then he gives them a stark reality. Verse 14, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. Under that worldly wisdom, one, my wealth you think determines my actions. You think my wealth determines my success. But then my wealth blinds me to the reality of what exists. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know how many people that had plans for tomorrow that are no longer with us today? Tomorrow never came. I was just listening to the story of a recent plane crash as they were trying to enter the San Diego area, small jet plane with 6 people on. And the people that were on there was the very successful record owner who owned the jet, and he was flying it as well. And then he had some of his employees and staff, and they were coming from a project, and they were going to establish other projects, and coming down in that fog, and there were some things that should have been working that wasn't. They hit some phone wire, crashed into a neighborhood, and all of them are no longer here to experience today. All of them young, had plans for tomorrow, but they had no idea what tomorrow would bring. And we can go from story to story, person to person in life about how we have these plans. And for some of us, some of those plans may not, forget even include God, they may not even be godly. And we make these plans as if it's a sure thing. And we walk with the arrogance of, I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to make a profit from this. Now, again, nothing wrong with planning that. But as you are looking at, is this what the Lord wants for my life and for my skill set and for my family? You are constantly keeping that in mind, that even if you say, I would like to do this, and God taps you and go, no, you don't have a fit. What do you mean I can't do this, Lord? Why did you give me the skill set if I can't do it? It says, what is your life? He says, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You just assume it. You have no control over what tomorrow brings. And then it goes into this misunderstanding of life. This misunderstanding of life is the rest of 14, where he says, what is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes or disappears. It was a play on words. You appear and you disappear. And they understood that whole issue of misting, because in that very arid, hot climate, if water was to spray as a mist, it would evaporate quickly because it was so hot. So they understood. Some of them says it's like a vapor, right? And you already know, like my mind went back to an old rap song, and I was like, that one doesn't fit, so I can't use it. It went right back to it. I was like, nah, that example doesn't fit, can't use it. But when you think of a vapor, and today we have a lot of vaping going on, and the vapor that comes, if it stayed around in your face and followed you, you know how many people would probably stop vaping? If the moment you blew it out, that smoke cloud, and it stayed in front of you, or you started to walk and it followed you, it would freak most of you out. You'd be like, I ain't doing this no more. But vapors don't do that. They appear, and then they disappear. And James says, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, that is your life in light of eternity. So you know what he's saying? You live with no eternal perspective. He says everything is about today. It's about this life. It's about my 1-year plan, my 5-year plan. God says that's great, but do you have an eternal plan? Is that plan is your eternal view governing your temporary view? Because if not, if all you have is your temporary view, thinking it's eternal, you've fooled yourself. Because nothing lasts forever. You look at yourself from 5 years ago, you're different. As a matter of fact, look at yourself from a year ago, you're different. Different in perspective, different in attitude, different in how you handle things because of what you've experienced. And so he says, what is your life? For you are a mist, and listen, that appears for a little time and disappears. And so that misunderstanding will cause you to miss out on an eternal perspective and not to realize the brevity or the shortness of life compared to eternity. Let's say everyone in this room lives to be 120. We go, wow, that's a long time. Not beside 3 trillion years is not. And 120 compared to 3 trillion is like a mist. But guess what? 3 trillion in comparison with eternity is like a mist. And what he's telling you is eternity is time with is you existing with no end. None. Right? It just keeps going. And so I've had to share this one time with some kids. Well, how long is eternity? Wrong question. I understand that. Because long and eternity don't go in the same conversation. But I said, put it this way. If you lived 5 billion years and put all the zeros behind it, wow, that's a long time. You're just getting started. Because that's eternity. And so if you live your short, I'm going to give us all 120. Most of us aren't even going to get there. But I'm going to give us 120. If you live your 120 years for yourself, and the next, on and on without end, apart from God, was that 120 worth it? No matter what you did, no matter what you accomplished. That's why the writer of Ecclesiastes, and you go through and you see all the different things, and he was able to say, vanity. Vanity. It's the way all is vanity. And then he proceeds to tell all of what he did. And he was like, what did I do it for? I'm going to end up just like the guy who didn't do anything in his life, who wasted all his time. The life here is same. As a matter of fact, he may live longer because he's not killing himself like I am. But we both are going to face an existence that goes on forever. What am I going to do with it? And so again, this worldly worldview will get us to the point to where we live arrogantly, because that's what James calls it. He says you're arrogant. And that arrogance, the world will tell you, that's what you need to make it today. God says it's evil. There's a comparison of the values, of the wisdom, of the worldview. And then he finishes and gives the godly worldview. He says, instead, you ought to say, now let me say this for a second. What he is not advocating is for you just going around saying, if the Lord wills, and then go do your own thing. That's not what he's saying. This is not about catchphrases. If the Lord wills, and then you go do your thing. I was like, you don't know what he will, but I know what you will do. You will do what you want. But what he is saying is, see, James, if you look at him throughout the book, is into what you say is a reflection of your heart. Throughout the whole book, James puts this there. The words that come out of your mouth come from your heart. So he's not saying you just blurb out sayings. If the Lord wills, and I'm like, and I've been, accused of doing, I've been like, if the Lord, I know good and well, I went asking what the Lord wanted. Well, if the Lord wills, as if that protects me. It doesn't. He is saying that if your heart is saying, I want what the Lord wants for me, is this in line with what he wants? Is this in line with my spending? And this is in line with the way I leisure? And this in line with the way I live with my family? And so the whole point here, he says, instead, of you just thinking, I'm going to do what I want because I can. He says your whole heart perspective, your whole heart should be saying, God, if you want this, if this is what you want, Lord, I'll do it. And you may, hey, go on and plan that profit, plan that place, and you may be wanting to move, plan that. But you know what? That plan, he says, Lord, I'm going to go with what else you have. And so if you short circuit, if you go no, if you close those doors, if you say no, then I'm not doing it. And there's nothing wrong with you setting those plans, knowing that you're not sinning, knowing that you're in a spot where God can use your resources and use your life because he has your heart, and you make them plans to go and you go. There's nothing wrong with that. Plan. Please plan. Because you're going to spend a whole lot more money if you don't. And you're going to waste a whole lot more time if you don't plan. We've heard the old saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. But the issue is, if you fail to plan without God, all your plans may have nothing to do with God. It's just you. And don't tie the tag on it, this is the Lord. Look at what he did. No, look at what you do. And in his mercy, he didn't stop it. Or maybe in his, I'm going to let you have what you want. I'm not going to stop it. Which to me is more scary. Please, Lord, stop me. But someone be like, Lord, why are you stopping me? And here's the thing, you don't want the Lord to go, fine, go ahead. And you run headlong into it thinking you free as ever. Don't understanding that you run into a trap that you may not be able to get out of. Or a trap that you will bear the scars of for years to come. Even if he gets you out. And so there's the godly worldview. He says, you should say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Notice what he said. Number one, he said, if the Lord's will, we will live. Number one, God has control over my life, whether I live or die. The fact that you woke up this morning, and I heard this said years ago, your alarm clock did not wake you up. Why do I know that? Put an alarm clock in the morgue and see who gets up. You got up because the Lord decided you were still alive. How many people did not wake up in their sleep? The issue is God is saying your life is mine. And you recognize that, and you realize that, and you live in light of that. And so he says, if the Lord wills, we will live, and we will do this or that. And here's what I love, too. He said this or that because James was encompassing everything. There isn't anything that doesn't come under that banner for him and for the Lord. And so I say, keep planning. But in your planning, always have in your mind, Lord, no, always knowing, number one, I'm not violating my relationship with the Lord nor the values of the Lord. But then number two, plan knowing that if he chooses to change, that you're cool with it. Even though it may cause some discomfort. I'm not saying that you have to like it. You may dislike the fact that the Lord changed plans because you may have really wanted to do that. And the Lord is saying, I got something else for you, right? And people like to spiritualize it. It's probably a bigger blessing. It may not be. It may be more struggle. But you are where the Lord wants you. Which one would you want? Abundance and the Lord's disapproval, or less and the Lord's approval? Don't answer because some of y'all are going, no, don't. The issue is, James is regulating here Christians that are well off. It also shows you not only is there an eternal perspective, it is centered and driven by the will of God. But then it also realizes the brevity of this life when you compare it to eternity. He says, if the Lord's will. And then the last one, we had a worldly worldview, a godly worldview. And then the last one is a reality to always remember. Because we'll hear this. All of us will hear it. And we got some choices to make afterwards. And James knew that too. Because he puts this phrase, it doesn't just apply here, but it includes here. That closing statement. So whoever knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him it is sin. Don't even ask, God, is this something that you don't like for me to do? You already know. He says, if you know that it's the right thing to do, and this applies to more than just planning for your life, but this governs all of your life, the plan for your life. If you know the right thing to do and you choose not to do it, for you can't even compare it to your neighbor. He wants you to look in the mirror. It's sin. You are going against God. God disapproves. You don't need to ask him. You don't need to have a prayer meeting. You don't need to pray and fast. You don't need to tarry. You already know. And so some questions. How are these perspectives, how are these worldviews seen in your life currently? I want you to ask yourself that. Where am I on this spectrum? Where am I on planning my life? Does God have a hold of who I am and what I do? Am I at least working toward that, or am I obstinately saying, no, this is what I want for me? What is your life to you? Is it yours to live, or is it his to live for? How do you determine what you will do in your life? How do you determine what you're going to do? Is it just purely based on ability and opportunity? Is it? And we'll throw the tag on there quick. This is going to be better off for my family. It may make you more money, but it may not be better for your family. It may be, but it may not. I'm doing this for them. I hear that so many times. Stop. You're doing it for you. Who governs your choices and actions? Or I should say, what even governs your choices and actions? Is it just your comfort? Well, God doesn't want me uncomfortable. Oh, you show me the verse that says that. Please point it out, because I haven't found it yet. He does give you all things to enjoy, but he doesn't mean he gives you all things to keep you comfortable. Sometimes you are enjoying that thing under pain. Sometimes you are enjoying it in a context you would rather not be in. Sometimes you're enjoying it, but also have to deal with other things around you that you would rather not have to. We are always in that place, in that scope. And so we have to ask ourselves that question. What is the Lord requiring of me? What or how am I making those decisions? Here's the question. What is your life? Let's pray.
You've been listening to a broadcast of Solid Word Bible Church, located at 4374 West 52nd Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. And if you made the decision to give your life to Christ, would you please share it with us so we can rejoice with you and also pray for you? Again, thank you for joining us, and may God continue to keep you until next time.